Today's agenda, we're going to be talking through how to do a post-mortem on the business in a business review. What are some of the best practices? How to quantify incrementality of sales and promotional activity. A lot of sellers are doing the right things on driving sales, but was it truly incremental? Did it add additional gross margin dollars to your business or not? How to leverage retargeting and other things to nurture your customers. The goal is essentially to increase your lifetime value of your customers. Inventory planning, what to do if you'll run out of stock, for example. What type of goals should you be setting as far as inventory levels? Some advertising strategies, especially things like targeting competitors who ran out of stock. Assortment planning and expansion, promotional planning and budgeting, things that you need to do related to content and A/B testing, and how to capitalize on all this traffic that you got and sales velocity to acquire more reviews and improve your ratings. So let's talk post-mortem. Amazon is a very structured company, and most of the businesses that I've been part of throughout my career have had a very structured process. But I find that Amazon sellers typically are very unstructured, and you don't want to swing the pendulum, completely the other way where you're so structured that you can't move fast. But there's a lot of value in taking the time, putting in the effort to document and analyze your business so that you can truly learn what worked, what didn't, and so forth. So we're going to talk through some of the things that we'd recommend you do. These are typical best practices. We'll first kind of talk about how would you do this in relation to the holidays, and then we'll shift into how would you do it in relation to a business review to kind of quantify the entire year. So one of the best practices, and guys, chime in with any other feedback from the team. But analyzing your sales. When did sales occur? For example, that's important because you need to know when to phase in inventory next year. What was the product mix? Most businesses have an 80-20 rule. So what drove the business? That's going to help with some of the other tactics we'll suggest down the road, like SKU rationalization. If you were to not document inventory stock issues, and then you look at your business to try and forecast, unit velocity that you need for next year, and you don't have these very specific inventory outage periods well documented and quantify what the missed sales opportunity was at that time, you're going to be missing the boat. You're always going to be shy on how much your true sales potential could be. Promotional analysis. What worked? What didn't? Was that lightning deal successful? But if it was not successful, what was the attributes to it? Was it a good time of day? Was it a great product? Was it a great price? Is it repeatable? How did my competition change over the holidays? Did I have competition that was, doing desperate things, selling products at a loss to win market share? Did I have, competitors doing things that I couldn't compete with? For example, did a competitor launch a product that was a 2-pack, for not much more than my single pack? What am I going to do about that? So analyzing these things and trying to come up with a game plan on how are you going to combat that for next holiday. How did your advertising performance do? What were the wins? What were the losses? Did you, do all of the right things to manage it? Were you cost efficient? Did you increase your budgets? Did you increase your bid amounts, or didn't you? All of these things will matter when you look at next year and try and plan how much do I need to spend in advertising to drive the business. It's important to write up a summary so you don't forget any of the details heading into next holiday. Some of the important things that you're going to want to document are stats. So, for example, what was the timing of the event? For example, Black Friday, Cyber Monday. Sometimes it shifts from one month to another. What was the timing of other promotions that you ran? How did it improve your ranking? When you ran that lightning deal, did your ranking get a boost? How, was there a long tail impact from that? Or was it, short and that needs to be considered that you didn't get a long tail boost from it? Maybe that promotional tactic was not as meaningful as you thought. It's important to document all of the baselines and then how your ranking differed, so that going into next year, you can really plan on pulling the right levers at the right time. For example, did you intentionally do things to boost your ranking prior to the holidays? Or were you so busy doing other things you forgot to do that, and you really started promoting your products on Black Friday? In that case, don't repeat it. Plan and figure out, how can I get better exposure when Black Friday comes about? And I'm going to do that by running some promotions in advance. Did I do the right content improvements? Was there misses there? Did I have problems, with getting the photographer to shoot images on time, or inventory that never arrived? We heard from a client yesterday that some of their inventory isn't going to arrive until January. Luckily, it's a product where the seasonality is not as drastic as others, not as giftable. But that's a huge impact for a lot of sellers this year, where a lot of your holiday inventory may have gotten tied up. So when you're looking at next year, you need to know all of those impacts so you can adjust accordingly. So, team, what other thoughts do you have related to holiday postmortems before we kind of shift and talk about how would that all relate to a yearly business review?
Sure, well, I can start. Oh, go ahead, Wes. You sure, Robert? Whoever that was. Yeah, I'll go quickly. Thank you. A couple of things on sales analysis that come to mind. So first of all, I would say, and this is my perspective on this, others may disagree. Some businesses, Q4 is make or break. Easily in 40-50%, maybe even a little more of their year. And so this kind of thing, you got to be extremely diligent and thorough. Other businesses, it's just, they're not Q4 businesses. So I would just say, how diligent you are going through this process, just got to balance it with how important the season is to you. Specific to season sales analysis, the two things that jump to mind is, number one, don't just look at the results, but look at the results against the plan, right? So many, if not all, sellers are budgeting. There's no way to do financial planning without it. So don't just look at sales, but where did you under and overperform your sales budgets, and use that for, course correction or planning next year. The other is, don't do it in a silo. Don't look at your sales results, but also compare it to the competition or the market. And, we often talk about Helium 10 has got a market tracker tool. It's not perfect. It's got some shortcomings, but using that as an example, it's very easy this time of year to be able to say, gee, my numbers are not what I thought they'd be, but hey, maybe I'm outperforming the market. So again, that to me is critical, is don't do it in a silo. And then, I'm not going to go through all of these, but the product performance, the 80-20, something I try to do as part of, and maybe we'll hold off for the yearly business review, but in general, when I look at the 80-20, is I look at it usually three ways. The 80-20 for the revenue, the 80-20 for customer acquisition, and the 80-20 for margin. And so, look at that, because typically what you'll find is if you look at the 80-20, there'll be an overlap across those buckets. Most of the product, if you do whatever your top 10 or top 20, whatever it is, but you will find products that do one thing better than the other. Some products may not generate a ton of revenue, but they're very profitable. So when you do that analysis, make sure you sort of bucket it that way and use them accordingly, in the following year. So I'll stop and let others chime in.
Yep. Yeah. I like this new hand raising thing we're doing that you have there. We should probably do that so we don't talk over each other. No,
I didn't know I did that. Did I raise my hand?
Yes, your hand is raised.
Wow.
There. So,
Okay. Sorry about that.
but that's actually not a bad idea. No, what I was going to say is when you're looking at things this year in particular, it was a weird year for us because of just all the inventory constraints, and which were primarily due to COVID. And so this year we saw a lot of the holiday sales starting much earlier than previous years. Next year, I'm assuming we'll be past this inventory constraint things, but that doesn't mean that people, if they did well and they did a promo early on, they're probably going to do it the same time. And there are going to be a lot of people doing that. So is holiday time next year going to start earlier? And that's where you get into your inventory planning there. So make notes of things, not just for your products, but just general, like these promotion things. They started October 30th this year versus they usually start November 15th. And I'm just making that up. But as you see things that are definitely holiday related, it's going to affect you next year. And if you have that, those notes, whatever they are, as Steve was saying, just document everything.
I was just going to add, I know you guys covered this, but I wanted to expand on it just a little bit. Paul, you were talking about looking at your market trends and what's happening there. But I wanted just to expand on that with, whatever tool you use for that. I would say when you're making your notes, post-mortem, those kind of things, really, I would almost do screenshots. And whenever I sold on Amazon, when I did these kind of quarterly or end of the year or bi-yearly business analysis, Excel sheets, reports, but I'd also record a video of things too, because I don't like writing down things all that much. But anyway, when you look at those marketing trends, I would just encourage the sellers to really have a good handle on your competitors' inventory. Try to have a good handle on where they were as far as reviews, and if anything changed, because it's just so volatile. Things are just so pivotal that can happen so quickly. Just keep notes on all those things so that you have a really good idea, like Steve was saying, what affected your sales and what affected these trends.
Yeah. And Wes, you made a good point there. And this is something that we say to do all the time. But if you did well in sales, you're going to have an uptick in reviews. And they're going to be your good reviews and bad reviews. Even the best products get bad reviews. As a brand owner, you know that you can interact with the person that gives you a review 3 or lower. So be prepared, in in January to start looking a little bit more closely, maybe a little bit more often at those things there, so you can react to them quickly and possibly get a consumer to change a review. By helping them out with something.
Yeah, I know we need to probably move on. I don't know if that was Steve was a subliminal moving to the next slide. But there's a couple of things real quickly I just wanted to call out. The inventory is just so critical. I mean, I can think of one client offhand, and we had some great seasonal opportunities this year. We haven't even talked about it yet, that we all went in and used helium-10 magnet, and now they've got this 30-day search trending, and you can see what's spiking. And we had some product categories that were really very opportunistic, and we started out with going after these seasonal terms, and all the KPIs on the advertising were rocking. And then in just like 3 days, we sold through the limited inventory, and it just bombed after that. And I mean, it's just, you really almost have to course correct based on inventory. Things that you may plan to do campaigns, if the inventory isn't there, start selling through, you're going to have a contingency plan. It's it's just so foundational. The other thing I just want to call out quickly, and then I know we'll move on, is this whole issue of the timing of events. And I know the next slide is around incrementality, but just the general comment of, in general, start to plan at least, I would say, no later than September for Q4 next year. And we'll get into it more, but a lot of things really need to be in place by September, October next year, to really be able to get into the November, December timeframe and really have a good read on kind of this whole issue of incrementality, which I know a lot of people struggled with this year. And, for me, it just got to the point where, some clients, we just had to say, look, we know there's a ton of activity going on this year. If it's a Q4 critical business, then they have to hit margin. If it's not a Q4 critical business, some clients, we just took the approach is, look, we're not going to make money on a lot of this stuff, but we know we have to be defensive. If we're not aggressive, we're going to lose volume. So, that whole, I guess for me, the financial planning piece of this is critical. Is what is my priority here? Do I have to make money Q4? Do I have to hit a certain margin goal? Or am I just going to make sure I'm not losing money and I'm going to be as aggressive and defensive as possible? Those kind of really drove a lot of decisions for clients I work with.
The one thing that you do well, Paul, with all your clients is planning and analysis. And I think that's an area where all too often we see Amazon sellers just fall short in that area. And these postmortems, whether it's a holiday postmortem or a yearly business review, it's so critical to document all of this stuff so that you can say, you know what, when I analyzed it, I drove a lot of top line revenue, but I suffered on bottom line. It wasn't worth it. I blew through my inventory way too fast. I couldn't replenish. It impacted my ranking down the road because I ran out of inventory. If you don't document these things, you don't compare it versus your plan strategy, or worse yet, you don't have a plan in place and you're just flying by the seat of your pants. You're gonna fail. So this is a great way to make sure that you don't have the same impacts. And I'll keep it real short on the next section, which is yearly business review. Essentially, it's the same thing, the same types of analysis that you're going to do as you do for a holiday postmortem, but think bigger picture. So, for example, it's hard for half of us to remember what we had for breakfast this morning. So, what happened in April of this year? What happened in January of this year? That's so long ago by e-commerce. It's like there's dog years and there's e-commerce years. There's it's a long time ago. So if you're not taking the time to diligently walk through all the different events that have happened and account for those things and plan accordingly for next year, you're gonna miss out on opportunities. You're gonna miss out on the learnings you may have been able to capture. And every good seller is, well, first off, every e-commerce seller is going to be facing with constant change. Things are going to change. Your abilities to sell on Amazon are going to change. One rule changes and now a tactic is different. These things happen all the time. So you've got to make sure you're analyzing those things and then planning accordingly. But, the best of the best sellers are adapting to things that don't seem like they could be adaptable. So, for example, Amazon knew that there was going to be shortages with supply chain. They knew that there was going to be problems with boats on the water, and even something as simple as getting containers. There was a shortage of containers. People couldn't get enough containers to put their goods. So Amazon started making their own containers. They started chartering their own ships. And other companies started following suit, Home Depot and Costco and others. And, when I look at investing in a business, what I'm looking for is a business that I believe in and a business that is able to adapt to win in all situations. And those are the types of examples where Amazon has chosen to take things under their own hands, under their own control and win. You need to be doing the same thing. If all of a sudden your inventory didn't pan out the way you needed it to, what are you going to do? And it may not be an instant fix. It might be a long-term fix. So for example, later in the slide, we're going to talk about assortment expansion and diversification. You may find that, hey, I had an impact with maybe the competitive situation is changing. Maybe you need to reinvent yourself into new categories, or maybe you need to reinvent your product assortment. Maybe you were the king before, but now everybody's copied you and essentially has the same product cheaper. You have to adapt. So these are important tactics for that purpose.
Yeah.
Anything else on the annual?
I was just going to say, I loved it when we were prepping for this, Steve, and you were taking 3-4 minutes to explain what this was. And I just said, Steve, all you had to say to me was monthly business review, weekly or yearly business review, because both of us as ex-Amazon employees, that's what we did. I mean, it was every week they did it, looking at week over week stuff, and then every month, and there were just what happened that month, looking at the numbers, et cetera, et cetera. And that's one of the reasons Amazon is successful, because they can do that. Even the highest level people in a department can speak to an individual ASIN. A director knows what's going on, with it because of these reports. And when you do this, especially when you build it up, you're going to be able to go back last year and compare. If you end up doing this on month by month basis, you'll be able to do it time and time again, repeatable. It's exactly the word you used with it. That's why these things are so critical.
And a lot of people don't realize this, but Amazon does not use PowerPoint. They use Word documents, and they will literally write out basically a 2 to 6 page document explaining the business, what's transpired in the business this week, this month, this year. And anybody at any point in time, whether you're an associate or an executive, can pull that up and see exactly what happened with the business. And it's done in very good detail. It's a really winning, I think it's a very, very much a winning strategy that everyone should deploy. So we're not a big fan of bullet points. We're a big fan of writing things out so you don't forget. It takes away the interpretation, and you should be doing the same when you're doing these documents.
Yep.
Yeah, I think for anybody that's on this call, a seller, a participant, not many of us, obviously, that's new to this, Wes talked about the making the videos and, downloading reports. Anybody that's new to this, is critical to understand that, the shelf life of reports in Amazon, it's not into perpetuity. And, when you come to this time next year and you go into Seller Central and you go into the campaign manager, you can look at this month and a year from now, but you'll get a monthly view. There'll be no detail. There'll be no way to go in and look at, in 12 months or 9 months, whatever, there'll be no way to go in there into Amazon Seller Central and look at your Q4 advertising in any level of detail. Same thing, clients that have, big product catalogs, even the business reports, it can be challenging to run a year's worth of data. So, people hear all the stuff we're talking about, and I just want to really emphasize that it's critical to download some of these reports, because they'll be gone and you will have no way to revisit what's happening right now.
That's a really good point. So we put on here as a bullet point advertising performance, but the reality is every month our clients generally will download all of their advertising performance and save those files because, as Paul mentioned, they're not granted to you in perpetuity. Usually there's like a 60, 90-day look back period, and then it's gone. So a lot of people get spoiled because they use a third-party software solution that's pulling that data, and then they continue to aggregate it. So they're going to look back typically 60 days, and then from any point that on, they're going to have that data for you to review. But that's in their platform, and that presents significant risk should you move on to another platform. So downloading those reports every single month is a strategy we recommend to our clients, and we'd recommend to any that are listening on this call. And it's not just advertising; it's any of your key performance reports. Save them because you never know when Amazon's going to take away a report. That's been known to happen before too, with some valuable reports where Amazon all of a sudden just said, we're not going to show these fields anymore. We're not going to display these reports anymore. Don't put yourself at risk of not having the data